Well, we are here, Jason. Episode 1. Are you excited?
I am.
How much on the scale of 10?
On a scale of 1 to 10, probably a above 8, 8 and above. Never done anything like this, so we'll see. We'll see how it turns out.
Okay, just for starters, can you very briefly tell a little bit about yourself?
A little bit about myself. Um, you want me to like give you my history?
No,
Uh,
what you do and what you currently, all businesses that you manage, just a very brief snapshot.
So that's a loaded question. I always struggle with where to start. So I guess to some extent, I am a medical device engineer, and I make little widgets that are used in laser lithotripsy for high-powered laser systems. That's the only thing that I do that really makes any money at this point. Everything else that I'm doing is mostly from a nonprofit point of view, and I've founded and run two nonprofits. Actually, I don't know that I should say that I run them because my wife runs one of them. They focus on salutogenesis. I assume we'll get into that a little bit more. So I'm a husband and father of three kids, and we stay very active and busy.
That's a good starting intro. Now, before we go into salutogenesis and understanding more in depth of that, let's go back in time and tell me about your upbringing. Where were you born and raised? And did you always want to be an entrepreneur?
Okay. Um, so I was born in upstate New York, but spent a lot of my early years overseas until I was around about 8 or 9. I lived in Belgium, Greece, and Bahrain. Bahrain's a small island nation in the Arabian Gulf, and living abroad at a young age really shaped my worldview, and I suppose made me adaptable in a way. But it also came with some challenges. One particularly intense experience was we had to be evacuated from Bahrain due to political unrest, and um, it was always presented to me, but I was pretty young as being evacuated. I think that it wasn't full on evacuation. It was more precautionary because after dropping my sister and I off, my mom stayed with us. Actually, I was just talking to my sister today, and I don't remember. I thought my mother went back with my father to Bahrain and just left us in the UK for a month or two. We stayed with friends that we had met in Greece. Um, and eventually we returned to the US and went to Northern California, where I graduated from high school and I attended University of California at Davis, got a dual degree in aeronautical and mechanical engineering. Um, but I spent most of my free time, that is, playing volleyball. And did I always want to be an entrepreneur? Yes, absolutely. So I grew up watching my dad. He could build, and he could do just about anything. He was really talented. Um, and I remember sketching out little inventions that I had, and I always wanted my dad to build them for me. Of course, he had other things he had to do. And so the first entrepreneurial experience that I can really remember, we had another family friend who we met in Greece who ended up moving out to the Bay Area with us, or not with us, but also. And he was working for a liquidation company at the time, and he was liquidating some company that had a whole bunch of candy, and he let my sister and I take a bunch of candy, and I talked my sister into giving me her share as well. And I set up a little shop out right out of my bedroom window, and I sold candy to neighborhood kids. And I guess that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial mindset.
That's like the that's like the second to the lemonade selling candies to
Yeah,
peers.
yeah. No, I never did a lemonade stand, but I just made it myself.
Awesome. So now let's talk about your journey into the world of health and wellness. Was there a specific moment or experience that led to you to go in this field? How does that happen?
So yes, definitely. But to be honest, in going through this, it makes me think of I think the first time that I struggled with the idea of health and longevity was actually shortly after we got evacuated from Bahrain in the UK. I remember I had a nightmare, and my sister woke me up and asked me what was wrong. And I was only 7 at the time, so I had a really tough time trying to verbalize the concept of infinity and uh, never-ending time and space. And for some reason, that really terrified me. And the best that I could do was say that I was scared to die, had a fear of death. And but looking back, that I assume that kind of makes sense because we'd just been forced to leave our home in Bahrain, and that instilled a sense of vulnerability, I suppose. Um, and so looking at it now, that's probably planted the first seeds of interest in health and longevity. Um, and then I kind of put it aside for a long time. I developed a love of planes and flight, and I pursued an engineering degree, specifically aeronautical and mechanical. And while at Davis, I actually worked for Muller International, making the Sky Car, which was a whole heck of a lot of fun, especially for a college kid. And then my first job out of college was working for Lockheed Martin, but working on missiles didn't sit really well. And so when a friend invited me to help him design medical laser systems, I kind of jumped at the chance. And that allowed me to then shift and start using engineering to focus on health. But what really sent me down this path with a sense of purpose was that my entire family got cancer. Um, and that hit pretty hard. And I was left kind of questioning everything I knew about health and disease, and questioning how could people who were rarely ever sick, always active, suddenly diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It didn't make any sense to me, and that's what really started me down this rabbit hole and trying to understand health and disease more profoundly.
And and how old were you? Like, is it like after you're done with your stint in Lockheed and then moved into this world professionally? How old were you at that time?
How old was I when my parents got cancer, or how old was I when I started making medical laser systems?
Both. When you lost your parents, how old were you? And then when you moved into medical devices, when was that?
So when I moved into medical devices, I only worked for Lockheed Martin for a year, actually a year and a day. That way I didn't have to give them back my signing bonus after college. So it was immediately after college. Um, and then I worked on medical laser systems for the next, I think it was a little over a decade, 12 years, I think. And then actually, no, more than that, because then I went to work for another company and helped them make medical laser systems. That you could actually consider that my claim to fame. I actually changed the laser lithotripsy niche, and that's lithotripsy is fragmenting kidney stones and bladder stones. So my contributions changed an entire industry, but it's small enough that nobody cares. unless you happen to have a kidney stone, then you might care. Um, and then I actually started a company with my father, and then had to um, that we were actually only working together for about a year before he got cancer. And then that kind of threw a monkey wrench in everything. And I shifted the focus from um, taking the little widgets that I had invented, and instead of designing laser systems around that and continuing to innovate that particular niche, um, I switched and started looking at uh, what what makes people healthy. Really, I started really researching salutogenesis.
I would imagine like obviously difficult time to just cope with everything, but uh, giving you this drive to go ahead and basically questioning the world around you and trying to find these answers. Was that the point when you also moved into where you are in building this nonprofits after that, or was there something else that happened first and then that led to this?
Um, so when my entire family got cancer, I started doing a lot of research and looked at what health really meant. Why, and I didn't care whether it was alternative, whether it was conventional. I wanted to understand why therapies worked and why they didn't work, and what the differences was when they were working and when they weren't working. Um, that that's kind of where everything started. And because of my medical device background making laser systems, I absolutely had a bias towards looking at device focused health interventions. So I guess that's where I started. Did I answer the full question?
Yeah, you did. Yes.
I did.
um,
Okay.
and so okay, now obviously the next steps. So you mentioned this concept of eudaimonia and this Greek idea of flourishing. That's what it means, right? Can you tell us what it means to you and how it aligns with this philosophy behind your foundation? Also, tell us a little bit about, what is Ionic Alliance Foundation, and what really, when what was the first step when you're getting started with it?
Sure. So there's actually a lot in that question. So I'll back up a little bit. One of the first things that I did after having done all of this research and after my parents ended up passing away was I made the emotional vow of wanting to cure cancer. And I understand that that's completely unrealistic. But I also think it's a fairly common thing that people say. And at the time, the only thing that I thought I could really do was help people live more salutogenic lives. And so I ended up founding and starting the first nonprofit, which is Eudaimonia HFC, and that's it's actually a ministry. And I'm not super religious, so I didn't really feel qualified to run it. So I kind of just set it up. I actually had a friend who was a minister. He ended up running things, he and his wife, and then that kind of freed me up to continue focusing on what health is and really looking and digging into going down that rabbit hole of different therapies. Um, but Eudaimonia started. Um, so we implement or work with neurosomatic integration, and that's really just kind of a fancy way of saying brain-based movement practices. And that could be a whole other episode that we could go into all sorts of things, but um, basically the brain craves novelty, and There are theories that say that we have a brain because we move. So really, novel movement is very healthy for the brain. Um, Something that could be very novel movement is ninja warrior and parkour type activities. So the um, the our facility is if you come into the main tabernacle, it looks like a ninja warrior parkour gym. And while the original intent for that was a lot different than just having kids play, it's also a lot of fun, and it became really popular with kids. And then it became a little bit awkward to try and talk to people about chronic disease. And so after a while of trying to do that, we realized that we needed to, or I needed to form another nonprofit, which is the Ionic Alliance Foundation. So that's how the Ionic Alliance Foundation came to be. But you want me to define what eudaimonia is?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So in ancient Greek mythology, so obviously, since I lived in Greece, some of this strikes a chord with me. But in ancient Greek mythology, eudaimons were the guardian spirits who offered protection and guidance to people. Nowadays, people define eudaimonia simply as human flourishing, but Aristotle, he's the Greek philosopher who popularized the term, he defined eudaimonia more fully as the innate potential of each individual to live a life of enduring happiness, penetrating wisdom, optimal well-being with authentic love and compassion. And then he also suggested that eudaimonia was best cultivated through an active lifestyle and continuous growth. So it's not about reaching any end goal like nirvana. It's more about continuous growth and constantly moving towards our highest potential. And that philosophy is really at the heart of both the missions for both Eudaimonia and Ionic Alliance Foundation.
That makes sense. And obviously, the core focus of this unique approach is salutogenesis. And could you explain, like, there is a lot of people who don't just layman terms, what it
Okay.
means and why you believe it is essential for lasting wellness?
Sure. So, salutogenesis is the concept that health isn't just the absence of disease. It's a positive quality that can be cultivated and optimized. And it involves not only eliminating disease, but also supporting and promoting health. So one way that might add some clarity is think of it like this. Many people, especially when they're young, have naturally robust immune systems. They don't really need to do much to avoid disease. Uh, and that leads to them feeling if they're not sick, well, then they're healthy. But health and disease really exist on a spectrum. And the absence of disease is really just the starting point of health. And real health requires nurturing. And our lifestyle choices can either move us toward health or toward disease. And almost every decision that we make, from the food that we eat, the activities that we engage in, or the thoughts that we think, impact our place on that spectrum. And salutogenesis really just emphasizes those choices that actively promote wellness and longevity.
And looking from the lens of the foundation, especially the
Mm-hmm.
Ionic Alliance Foundation, what is specifically happening there to support using this as a foundation to build solutions to help, in general, in this wellness journey for the people? What exactly you are building there?
So the Ionic Lines Foundation is studying and attempting to increase awareness of what we're calling ion biotechnology, and that's really just the study of how essential ions are used at the cellular level and what can happen at the cellular level with sufficient supply of different essential ions. So basically, it's a fairly focused look at nutrition, but not a real broad uh, scope, but very focused to these essential ions or these particular types of essential ions. And most of those that we're looking at are metal ions.
And is this on the tech side of it? This turns into some kind of a some device, tech solution, or a treatment? What exactly the how it works for the end users? The I
Um, Yeah, so I guess it is a technology that we're trying to put together and help develop. Really, it's derived from an ancestral medicine. So this has been around for a long time. And what we're looking at is different ways of making these essential ions significantly more bioavailable so that you can get more to cells as those cells are under stress and need greater access to the supply. Um, and the output of this, hopefully, is going to be a whole range of salutogenic products. Hopefully, that will be not only nutritional classification products, but then also branching over into medical devices and or drugs. But instead of being cratogenic, being salutogenic. So truly supporting health as opposed to forcing some particular cellular action that may or may not be required. So we're trying to let the body decide, let the cells decide and use their internal wisdom, if you will, as to what really needs to happen. Just make sure that they've got all of the nutrients that are needed to do whatever it is they need to do.
Interesting. And and of course we'll have different episode to talk more on that tech separately. But is there a certain age group when it becomes the most like I guess most applicable to apply these things that you're building, or is it like just like it's more diagnostic? It starts with the beginning. You do the diagnostic along with keep doing the diagnostic as you would do it your annuals and keep going ahead. How does it work in that way?
You're asking about the age at which people will hopefully be able to use this or need it, or are you asking about the age, how long this will take to develop?
I, yeah, I guess two questions to clarify here because um, it's probably a thing which you're doing proactively. So there is a preventative part to it, right? So
Absolutely.
and so it's not like the sick care system, which is our traditional system, where you are sick and then you get the treatment. So and then it's too late already in many cases. And so the question is, in your how you're doing it in this specifically in the world of salutogenesis, are there also checkpoints that's been kind of like built part of the diagnostics that we might not do it in traditional medicine, but we are doing it now, right now? Are there any those things done proactively, or what are those things? Those are done proactively.
Sure. So this path has been very counter to the traditional pharmaceutical drug development process, if that's the way that you want to look at that. We're actually coming from this from a point of view of, hey, this ancestral medicine is actually having very significant effects on pretty severe diseases. And so we started studying why and how that could occur and looked at how to improve the the ancestral medicine, and then still focused mostly on treating is the wrong word, but looking at how it could be used to treat different severe conditions. And most of these were chronic disease, such as cancer. And, but also in going through all this, or this entire process, realizing that this truly is a salutogenic substance, and process that we're putting together. And so at the same time, you don't have to wait until you get cancer to start using it. It was originally put into cosmetics, and people were using it on a daily basis. And if it can make cancer go away, it can absolutely keep cancer from occurring in the first place. And in truth, that's by far the best way to treat things, right? Is to make sure that you never have the problem in the first place. Now, that's not what most people end up doing, but that's some of what Eudaimonia and Ionic Alliance Foundation are trying to change, so that we can live more salutogenic lives and not have the same types of, or not get the same types of diseases that we get. Now, in truth, that might be, well, I don't want to say that's a fool's errand, but there are so many more stressors and toxins nowadays that you can try and live a really healthy lifestyle, as my parents did, as my family did, and still come down with these diseases. And that, the, there's, so if I look back, what could my parents have done to live healthier lifestyles? I almost can't come up with something. My father probably could have been in better shape, but in truth, we were really active. The first time that we knew anything was wrong, we were actually up on a skiing trip, and it was over Christmas. And that particular day, we were up at Breckenridge, and that particular day, instead of skiing, we went sledding, and we were running up this big hill, and then diving onto sleds. And my dad, so he had colon cancer, and how we knew about it was he actually had a secondary tumor on his clavicle. And the first that we knew about it was it had damaged his clavicle to the point where it wasn't very strong. He was, he got up the top of the hill, and then he took a few steps and dove onto the sled. And that force was enough force to actually break his clavicle. Um, and that was the first we knew that he had colon cancer, which seems crazy. But so it's not like he wasn't in very good shape. We were running up hills, and he actually was diving down them. Um, so, and we always ate excessively healthy. My mother was actually a practitioner of an energy medicine. And we ate organic food, so on and so forth, and yet, lived up in the mountains, didn't live in a city, and yet with all of that, they still both got cancer within just a couple of years of each other.
And so, would you think, obviously, one of the missions you mentioned is to drive awareness towards this? Would you think that is the difference between right now? People just don't know about anything in this. They just know traditional medicine, and that's where it all goes. So there is no actions taken because there is no awareness. Is awareness is the number one thing you would pinpoint to that is like, we are still like everybody's just, it's just traditional medicine, and that is, kind of like you only know it when you get sick. There's nothing done, no lifestyle changes. So would you say that?
Yes, and now the collective consciousness is changing on this issue for sure. One of the things that I want to change in what you said, what Western medicine is, that's not traditional medicine, that's conventional medicine. Um, we start saying traditional, but I think that's a misnomer. It's conventional medicine, and it's not to say that conventional medicine is bad. What I think that is bad about conventional medicine is how profit focused it is, and how narrow in scope it is. Again, it focuses very much on, well, if you don't have a disease, then you're healthy, and it goes so far as to be, if I can't diagnose your disease, you're healthy. And lots of people get really frustrated with that because they know that something's wrong. They just can't tell me what it is, in which case they're saying there's nothing wrong. And that's that's where that's where we need to start changing. There are plenty of things that we can be doing to increase our health, regardless of whether or not somebody says we've got a disease or not. And then on top of that, and hopefully we can get into dig into lots of these things more in later episodes. But the conventional medicine is so profit driven that it's very difficult to develop treatments for things if there's not going to be a significant profit there. And then to make matters worse, the way that the FDA is run and our regulations are set up, it is so ridiculously expensive to develop treatments that they have to be outrageous to ever get a return on investment. Um, and I think there are all sorts of things that we can do to make lots of this better, both on the conventional medicine side and on the not needing the conventional medicine interventions in the first place. But then, even if you do the best that you can throughout your life, which I think my parents were pretty close, you can still get cancer. And it's not, I don't want to say it's a crapshoot, because the toxic load is just so much higher now. And when I say toxic load, I'm talking about stress. I'm talking about the chemicals in our environment, the chemicals in our food, in our clothing, everything. And it's expounding and expanding every day at a pretty rapid pace. Um, this explains why cancer is increasing at a younger age. Even at the same time, if it is getting better or treatments are getting better at an older age, how is that possible? How can we both be getting better and worse at the same time? Well, it's because kids never used to get cancer because there really wasn't enough time for them to build up this toxic load to cause the problems that initiated. It took quite a bit of your life to be able to get there normally. And, you hear all sorts of people. Well, actually, you don't really hear this much anymore. But when I was younger, you'd hear about, oh, my grandfather smoked and drank every day of his life and he never got cancer. Yeah. If you actually look at that person, they also ate organic food every day of their life because that's all that existed back then. And the toxic load that existed back then, somebody who drank too much and smoked probably was on the order of what average people are today in terms of toxic load, maybe even better. Sorry, I feel like I went off rambling there a little bit.
No, no, I mean, uh, it is the reality. I was speaking with another physician and who has made this move towards functional medicine. And, he's basically ditched the insurance system. And for just to this specific point that he actually uses, quoted the same way how you are quoting, that, there is so much plastic in the environment, the air is bad, the food is, not organic enough, and we are consuming all these things. It all turns down is like and his words were like, if I practice the medicine in the box of insurance, I just feel like I just don't have enough time to make the right assessment for his patients, and which
Yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
which obviously, um, from his perspective as a professional in this field, was kind of going to this thing how you were connecting to, like, how it leads towards themselves. Like now, this is two things again, both the money thing that you were mentioning, how it's done, and the second thing was just because our, it's we are there's just too much toxin all around us, like from food to environment to everything else. And this and he kind of like explained in his job, like it stops from him doing his job as well. So it's reminded me of that when you were speaking. Um, but let's talk about, like, while you are on, or while you have been on this journey for a little bit now, uh, what's been like one surprising thing that you learned about people's approach to health and healing specifically? Any example?
Um, yeah, and so actually, let me pick two, one good and one bad. Um, there have been lots of surprising things, but probably too much to talk about. So focus just on two. The good, I've actually seen how when it comes to healing, people seem to expect a radical change or extreme treatments to make real significant progress towards healing. But surprisingly, it's the small, consistent lifestyle and mindset shifts that yield the most sustainable health benefits. Daily habits like optimal nutrition, exercise, simple stress management practices, when done consistently, create truly transformative results. And I guess the surprising part to me is that true healing doesn't always require these drastic measures, and it's the steady, intentional changes that make the biggest long-term impact. And that that might sound obvious to lots of people. That was really hard for me because I want to make big changes, and to some extent, big changes can have a dramatic impact as well. They can shift your life, and then your habits from that point on have now shifted. So I'm not discounting that, but I'm more talking about you know, oh, I was diagnosed with cancer, give me chemotherapy, and then I should just be better, right? Well, okay, it took you a really long time to develop cancer in the first place. So imagining that we could do something drastically to the body to immediately change things and suddenly you get better, oh, that's kind of unrealistic. It's going to take some time. Now, there are all sorts of things that we can do to accelerate that timeline, because hopefully we weren't trying to get bad over time. If you tried to get bad over time, you could probably get bad really fast. Uh, Likewise, if we try to get better and heal, we can do that fairly quickly. But those larger drastic changes are difficult to incorporate as an ongoing habit in your life. I guess that's my point with that. So that's the good thing. Small changes can actually have a really big impact over time. Now, the bad is, I guess I would sum it up this way. Fear clouds rational decision making, and there's no end to the people who will exploit that. A life-threatening illness like cancer makes it incredibly difficult to think clearly. And in that situation, our natural reaction is really to defer to an authority or to defer to somebody else who has more information than us. And then just say to them, okay, well, you know more, you take care of this. Because it's, as I said, it's hard to really think rationally in the presence of significant fear. Um, and this leads people to, following advice to put highly toxic substances in their body and pay large sums of money to do it. And those toxic substances can either be conventional or alternative. And this kind of strikes a nerve with me because when my parents were battling cancer, we spent well over six figures on all sorts of junk, conventional and alternative. And in many cases, somewhere in their mind, people can consciously even make that choice. When it comes to like alternative therapies, sure, someone's going to charge me a few $1,000s to do some various thing. It's probably a scam, but I'll go ahead and pay the money anyways because, otherwise I'm going to die. I might as well try it. There's a small chance that maybe this guy's not trying to scam me. Um, and I suppose that also played a big part as to why I started both Ionic Alliance Foundation and Eudaimonia. Um, yes, I wanted to do what I could to help others avoid the pain of losing loved ones too soon. But I also wanted to reduce the that exploitation that I saw that was all too common.
And speaking of misconceptions and myths, if you had probably, I guess, is there one specific thing that you would like to debunk, especially for salutogenesis or alternative therapies? Anything that you could pick, what would that be?
Um, so hopefully I can back up and be really general here. Um, Lots of people think that alternative therapies are just placebo, the placebo effect. Now, I disagree in many cases, but let's pretend for a moment that they are placebo. So in conventional medicine, if something performs only as well as a placebo, it's considered worthless. Now, most of that's probably because it also comes along with all sorts of adverse effects, and if you could get the same effect with a placebo, well, then obviously getting negative effects. I mean, you wouldn't want that approved as a drug. But the placebo effect itself shows us how powerful the body's ability to heal really is. So a placebo isn't nothing. It's a trigger that engages the brain's ability to start the healing process. Um, so let me contrast to things that are clearly not placebo. Like, so take stitches, for example. Stitches don't heal your skin. They simply pull two or the torn edges of skin back together again and hold them together long enough for the body to heal. But it's the body that heals itself. The stitches don't do anything except change the environment there so that it's easier for the body to heal. Likewise, most drugs work in a similar fashion. They force a certain cellular action to occur, and that causes a shift in the environment that allows healing to occur. But it's the body that's actually doing the healing, not the conventional intervention. And so the placebo effect really suggests that we can trigger this healing directly. There's even I think it's called the purple pill. There was a company making a little pill. I think it just had yeast in it or something. Um, and the whole idea was that you took this purple looking pill, you set a healing intention, and then you take the pill and you let that action initiate the healing response from the brain. And so the brain's link to a novel physical action could also explain why so many therapies work fairly well initially and then peter off. As the brain becomes more accustomed to this new stimulus, it has less of an effect. But something that if you start studying applied neuroscience or applied neurology, you'll find that the answer to almost every question is almost always it depends. Um, you can. It's also possible that the brain, as it becomes familiar with a specific stimulus being associated with healing, that healing process gets stronger. So you could actually go either way. Um, Regardless, uh, what I find interesting here is that if somebody in authority discredits the placebo effect for any treatment, pick whatever treatment you want. If you believe that, then for you, those placebo effects disappear. And assuming no one was being taken advantage of, um, I question whether the authority that performed this or convinced you or discredited this placebo, did they do you a service or not? Right? Whatever it was, it worked before and almost by definition had no adverse effects, and now it won't work. So while I don't think that most alternative therapies are placebo, even if they are, I don't want to discredit them because you can think of prayer as a placebo effect, meaning the act of praying and asking your body to get better, or asking God or spirit or whatever to help you get better, can be, in some instances, enough of a trigger to your brain to turn on the healing process. Are you going to ever tell somebody not to do that? Um, I don't know. I guess that's what I would say in terms of if I can debunk anything, it's that the placebo effect can be the most amazing healing possible.
Yeah, you're kind of making a point that why stop doing it if it is going to be net negative for you. Like, it's at least having it is going to probably lead to, even if it's placebo, is can lead to positive results, outcomes, whatever that is. So by not doing it, you basically are closing that door to healing or whatever that you want to say it. So and that kind of like putting yourself out of that option of what it is, right? So uh interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting the way you put it up and explained it, but makes sense. um okay, well, this has been great, but before we conclude today's conversation or episode, what would you like listeners to walk away with after, you know, hearing your story and the mission behind Ionic Foundation? What's like one thing would you like all the listeners to walk away with?
I guess I would say three things. First is that um, conventional medicine doesn't have all the answers, and money plays a huge role in what treatments are offered and why in conventional medicine. I'd actually, in an ideal world, there wouldn't be conventional versus alternative medicine. There would just be medicine, and there would just be healthcare. And it doesn't matter whether something took $1 billion to develop or has been being practiced for 1,000 years. If they produce benefit, um, we could use both of them and we could look at both of them. And if somebody wanted to do research, you could actually do the research on the the traditional practice and look at why it is beneficial. But at the same time, if people have been doing that for 1,000 years, you could argue that that might be a waste of money because we already know it's working. But from a conventional viewpoint, you're not allowed to say that because no one's proven it. So that's my first thing. Conventional medicine doesn't know everything. Uh, the second thing, I know I pointed out how there's no end of the people who will exploit the fear associated with significant disease. But I'd like to also point out that there are also people who generally want to help and are trying to make a difference. I'd like to consider myself in that category. Um, and finally, I guess we should remember that the choices we make every day, what we eat, how we move, what we think, moves us along the wellness spectrum, either toward health or toward disease. And finding a balance there is key. And I guess I would suggest striving to make healthy choices roughly 80% of the time is probably a good rule. The 80-20 rule shows up everywhere, and health and wellness is no exception. So those would be the three things that I'd like you to take away.
All right. Um, you heard it. And Jasen, this has been great conversation. And we will put all the links to the show notes, including website and Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And if you want to watch the video, it will be on YouTube and also on the show website. And we will come back next time with more detailed discussions on the next topic. Thank you for your time, Jasen. Much
All
appreciated.
right. Well, thank you very much.